Hi, welcome to the walkthrough video for Worship Essentials 2.1, an exciting update to our flagship Worship Essentials product. Worship Essentials 2.1 lets you play creatively with all the patches and features you need as a modern worship keyboardist. Worship Essentials 2.1 does not require any third-party software or plugins. As long as you have a Mac with MainStage, you're ready to go. I'm Aaron, and I'm going to show you all about it. After downloading the file included with your order, double-click the Worship Essentials 2.1 installer and agree to the license terms. Then double-click on the Worship Essentials 2.1 install package and follow the installer through the wizard. This will move all of the related files and dependencies into place. And here you can see where it's moving everything. If you need to do this manually or prefer to install it manually, double-click the Worship Essentials 2.1 manual installer and then move all the dependencies into the appropriate place. I'll show you a few things here. Included with Worship Essentials is the primary MainStage concert, but it does also include a Logic session in case you're producing in Logic and would prefer to have access to these sounds in Logic. In the Extras folder, there's a few little goodies as well. We have a Nano Control 2 configuration file that loads the defaults needed for Worship Essentials, and we also have some wallpapers in case you'd like to spice up your rig with some Worship Essentials artwork. Once Worship Essentials is installed, navigate to your Music folder, into the MainStage folder, and then double-click the Worship Essentials 2.1 concert. I'll load that now. Let me give you a quick overview of the Worship Essentials interface. The layout of Worship Essentials very closely mimics the layout of the Korg Nano Control 2 because all the on-screen controls are pre-mapped to buttons, knobs, or faders on the Korg Nano Control 2. Across the top, we have our global effects like reverb, shimmer, delay, and compression. In the center, we have our patch browser that lets you navigate up or down patches inside the Worship Essentials concert. These are pre-mapped to the next and the previous track buttons. The main area of the interface is comprised of our 6 primary layers that correspond with faders 1 through 6 on the Korg Nano Control 2. As we move through different patches in the Worship Essentials set, we'll have different sounds available to us on each of these 6 faders. On the left, we have our drone pad fader, which corresponds with fader number 7 on the Korg Nano Control 2. And then on the right, we have our master volume, which is fader number 8. In the very low left corner, we have a panic button to clear any MIDI notes that may get stuck. Panic is mapped to the far lower left button on your MIDI controller as well. In the lower right-hand corner, we have a tap tempo button for tapping in any tempo, because all the effects and delays within the concert are tempo locked and will adjust themselves to any tempo that you tap in. Now below the main area, we have our Drone Tools section. Drone Tools is an ambient pad generator that triggers an endlessly sustaining pad that you can play on top of. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But before you're ready to play, we need to make sure that your MIDI controller is set up to work with Worship Essentials. So click on the Layout tab in MainStage and then select the primary keyboard instance at the bottom of the screen. Then click on Assign and play any note on your MIDI controller. This will tell MainStage to respond to your primary controller. If you have a secondary controller, you can use that to control the Drone Tools pad. If that's the case, select the smaller keyboard instance, click Assign, and then play any note on your secondary controller, and you can use that to control Drone Tools instead. Now let's switch back to edit mode, and we're ready to play. For each sound inside each patch, the 3 buttons to the left of the fader modify different aspects of that sound. For instance, on this particular patch, layer number 1 is our piano sound. And the first button engages an octave So you can play an octave lead with just one note. Our second button engages a little bit of a high-end EQ boost, so it cuts through a little better. And then the third button engages a velocity limiter to keep the velocities in the soft, super delicate range. And the concept is the same across the rest of the sounds on all of the patches. A new feature for Worship Essentials 2.1 is our new Patch Designer feature that lets you put any sound in the Worship Essentials library on any layer. In the patch list on the left-hand side, expand the Patch Designer Layer 1 folder. This folder has a patch for every single sound in the Worship Essentials library, but it's pre-mapped to the Layer 1 position. If you expand the Layer 2 folder, you'll find the same thing. Again, it's every single patch in the Worship Essentials library pre-mapped to the Layer 2 position. Same with layers 3 through 6. Now you can build a custom patch by choosing a patch for Layer 1. In this case, I'm going to choose an EP. I'm going to scroll down to Layer 2, and I'm going to hold down the Command key on the keyboard, and then choose a secondary sound. Now I'm going to keep scrolling down to the Layer 3 folder, and I'm going to choose another sound for our Layer 3 position. Now with all three of those patches selected, and again, you can see by scrolling through the list here, I have all three of these patches selected. You can right-click and choose New Patch from Selected Patches, or you can go up to the Patch List Action menu and choose the same thing, New Patch from Selected Patches. This will create a new patch in the list and merge in all of the instruments from all three of those selections. You can double-click to rename your patch, and then you're ready to go. Here's the EP on Layer 1, pad on Layer number 2, and our organ on 3. Now this is great because you can create any custom patch that you want with any sound in each layer. But we realize you may not want all of these patches loaded all of the time. In fact, for performance reasons, it might be better to remove the patches that you're not going to use just to keep your MainStage concert trimmed down and more efficient. So I'm going to remove all of these patches here for just a moment. In fact, I've deleted everything except our default patch here. Now you can still use the Patch Designer to build custom patches. So what we're going to do is we're going to browse up to the patch list, click on Add a New Patch, and then in the inspector at the bottom, click on Patch Library, browse out to your user patches, to the instrument folder, to Worship Essentials 2.1 patches, and then select the Patch Designer Layer 1 folder. I'm going to choose something for Layer 1 here. Let's bring in the worship piano. Now I'm going to create a new patch, follow the same process, browse out to User Patches, Instrument, Worship Essentials 2.1, Layer 2. Here, I'm going to load up the classic organ. For demonstration, I'll load a third one as well. Browse out to the same location, Layer 3. Bring in this. Now, with those three patches selected, go up to the Actions menu, New Patch from Selected Patches, and here's a new custom patch again. Using this feature, you can keep the Worship Essentials concert stripped down so it functions better, but you can still build the custom patches that you want. Now I'll mention that Layer 5 is the only layer that can contain the Worship Essentials strings patch, because the strings is actually a custom combination of Layer 5 and 6. So if you're looking for the Worship Essentials strings, make sure to put those on Layer 5. We've also included the original Worship Essentials layered patches in the same place as well. If you deleted any of the factory defaults, you can create a new empty patch and browse to User Patches, Instrument, Worship Essentials 2.1, Worship Essentials layered patches, and then choose from all of the original patches that were included with the original concert. Here's a look at some of the new features with drone tools. As I mentioned before, you can set up a secondary keyboard to trigger the drone pads, or you can click the notes on the screen. To stop playback, press the play button on your Korg Nano Control controller, or toggle the on-off button on screen. Now, these first two knobs for octave and intervals only apply before you've triggered a note. The octave controls which octave the pad sustains in, and the interval controls the thickness of the chord, usually just root or open fifths. So if I pull this all the way down and trigger a C, you'll see it plays just the fifth. If I bring this up one notch and trigger it again, you can hear it plays the root and the fifth. As we move up, it gradually increases the number of notes in the chord. And as the chord becomes more complex, you might need to change the octave up a notch and re-trigger as well. The cutoff knob is a low-pass filter that rolls off the high end so you can really dial in the tone of that pad. And layer 2 is an additional shimmer layer that you can bring in or out to help shape the overall texture. You can really hear it if I boost it here. While the drone pad is playing, you can also enable Motion 1 or Motion 2 by clicking the buttons on screen or pushing the buttons on the Korg Nano Control 2. Motion 1 triggers an envelope that gradually expands the sound as it plays. Motion 2 introduces a slight bit of pulsing. Combine both of them and adjust the cutoff filter for a pad that fits just about under anything. I know you'll love playing with Worship Essentials, and we'd love to hear from you too. So be sure to find us on social media and share with us how and where you're using Worship Essentials. You can find this product and more, and answers to any questions you might have at our website at www.thatworshipsound.com.